Welcome to the Gita in Action podcast. My name's Radha, and I am your host today. And I am here with a group of fellow seekers, and we are reading through the Bhagavad Gita and diving into it further and talking about how it applies to our lives and our experiences. And I love being here with you guys every Monday and Thursday. It's like the highlight of my week. So thank you all for being here. And if you want to join us live sometime, if you go to our Instagram, Seekers Quest 108, and in the link tree, it's like the bio in the link tree, you can get on the WhatsApp group and then you'll get the Zoom links and all the updates and everything like that. So please join us live, and we love to hear your voice. So we are in chapter 2, text 48 today. That's where we're starting, chapter 2, text 48. And just to reorientate us, we're in this section where Krishna is kind of comparing karma kanda and karma yoga. Karma kanda being this transactional kind of relationship with God. I pray for material pleasures either in this life or the next life, and then I expect God to kind of fulfill my request in that way. And that's my relationship with God. And karma yoga, which Krishna is teaching us, which is a higher relationship with God than karma kanda would be, is acting selflessly, doing our work and selflessly dedicating the fruits of the actions to God without getting too attached to them for our own sense gratification, whether that be, the fruit of the labor that it actually produces, if we earn money, using them to in a selfish way to make ourselves happier. Maybe we give that money to other people. We're more generous with our money, something like that. Or even like, I do this job so that I can achieve and I can feel good about myself. And, it's more about taking myself out of the center and acting more for the whole, acting more for the benefit of the whole than just myself. And that's more the vision of this karma yoga. So with that, we'll get right into it. Text 48. Perform your duty equiposed, O Arjuna, abandoning all attachment to success or failure. Such equanimity is called yoga. So most of us are inclined to act for our senses, right? Even marketing caters to this. Like any commercial you see, all the Instagram ads, it's all like, get a more beautiful body, get more beautiful skin, get more money and be more successful. All of these things that just like cater to our senses. But the Gita is trying to teach us to be different. The Gita is trying to teach us to act with intelligence. And when the Gita uses the word intelligence, it's not to mean like how much information I can store in this brain and then use it later. That's not so much the definition of intelligence for the Gita. Acting in intelligence means not to act for selfish reasons. It's more about having knowledge of the body and the soul and the spirit and the relationship between the soul with God. That's more how intelligence would be defined in the Gita, and knowledge would be defined. So if we're acting in intelligence, then we understand those relationships and those distinctions. And we don't act for selfish reasons because we know that it will bind us to this material world. Right? If we know that we'll get stuck in that never-ending cycle of happiness and distress when we aspire for our own endeavor alone, when we want something like a quick happiness, we know that it won't really make us happy long term. So we should act for a selfless reason, and in this way connect with yoga. So, I'll tell you guys, when a few years ago, Veda reached out to me and asked me to do a podcast with them and, encouraged me to start teaching and kind of putting myself out there more. And I was so like adverse to it. And honestly, I was so adverse to it because I was so stuck in my ego. Like, what if I'm not good enough? What if people don't like me? What if, I was so worried about what it would mean about me. And I was so insecure about that, that I wasn't really so into it. I was like, I'm good just to kind of sit here and do my thing and not put myself out there. But I think as he kept pushing, and as I kept evolving in my spiritual life, I was able to think of it more as like, okay, I'll just try this, and whatever it is, it's my sincere offering, and that's okay. It became as I tried to focus more on this consciousness, this, I'm just doing it as an offering, and whatever the result is, if people love it, if people hate it, whatever it is, that is what it is. That's God's will, and I just accept it. And that made it so much easier for me to kind of show up and to just be authentic, in a way that I don't think I ever would have been able to if I didn't have this philosophy to lean on, because it was honestly just too terrifying if I'm just thinking of myself all the time. I'm like freezing. I'm so stuck in my head. I can't, but when it's like, when I make that intention and I really try to just focus on God and the reason that I'm doing this without focusing on myself, it makes it so much easier. And so it's also it's like a trick, even if you don't like, if you can take yourself out of the center, it will enable you to really do so much more. But then what I found is that it really enhances my spiritual practice as well, because I feel more connected to God in that way, because I feel more connected to that service. So it's really knowing and trusting, that if God wants something to change, he'll change it, or he'll end it, or make it. And just being okay with that. Just doing your part, doing your best as this part and parcel that we are, right? Doing your best to serve the whole, and then just accepting it. Because if we're acting for a selfish reason, everything will eventually collapse. If we're doing it for us, just celebrities go through this all the time. Their careers are like this, and that's so difficult for them. I mean, they collapse, like, to be the center of the world, to be the center of everything, and then all of a sudden not be. It's like they can't even deal with that, right? It's like it's not even our rightful position to be the center, and when we are, it's just anxiety, and that's what happens, right? So if we act selflessly, yeah, that's the other thing. If we act selflessly, there'll be no diminution of our efforts, and it's risk-free, right? You try your best, you do your duty, you put it out there. You're not doing it for yourself, your ego, your, whatever thing you need to feel good about yourself. You're trying your hardest not to do it for that, and offering the fruits to God, and then trying your hardest just to accept whatever comes with that, and accepting that is that's God's will. And in that way, you're building your relationship with God, but you're growing spiritually, right? So we talked about this before. Wherever you are on your spiritual evolution, when this body is over, when this body terminates, you get to keep that spiritual progress. You get to, your soul that evolved, and it comes back. So again, it's an investment, and it's risk-free, and it's guaranteed to pay off, and you get to take it with you. It's the only thing you get to take with you. So this is why this is the practice, and it's very purifying. You see, it's because we're all just trying. Nobody's like got it down. Nobody's like a liberated soul who's like, I'm 100% self. I mean, people get there eventually, but most of us are just trying, and we'll get purified in the process. We'll see. We'll see if somebody says something. I'm just using myself as an example in this because that's what I have to go off of. But if somebody has a bad comment about something that I put out there, I see, how it affects my ego, and that's something I have to like work on. Just let go of it. Just keep going and see where God takes it. And that's the process. That's how we become purified. That's how our ego comes to light, and how we're then able to work on it by reinforcing this mindset, and by diving deeper into our internal practices that really fuel these external practices, getting more sincere with why we're doing what we're doing. Right? So yoga means connection or link. Yoga connects us with the ultimate reality, connects God with the soul. That's what we're doing here. Remember, we all have an individual soul. It's part and parcel of God. So it's the same quality, but it's a different quantity, like a spark in the fire. That's what it is. We're all these little sparks. And then there's Paramatma, super soul, God in the heart. And yoga is connecting. We're connecting the soul with God. And this connection in itself gives us steadiness. If this connection makes us feel secure, it gives us this steadiness. Because if we're fixated on the dualities, the ups and downs of life, we can't rise upwards. We can't rise above this to this higher platform of happiness because we're too distracted with all the ups and downs of life. If again, just distracted with our egos, how will I look? What will people think of me? Oh, people think great things of me. Oh, I'm so happy. Oh, people think bad things of me. Oh, I'm so sad. We're still just focused on us. It's such an I-centered mentality, such a me-centered mentality that we don't have any hope of evolving to this connection with God, where that's what we really cherish and what we're really getting lasting happiness from. So we need to stay equipoised because we'll get distracted. And it helps us to become undistracted if we can focus on something higher. Again, we talked about like when a mother has a child and that love she feels is so engulfing and so consuming that's all she cares about. That's what we want to aspire to, this relationship with God. It's all we care about because we're getting so nourished from it that these other things just don't seem so important or relevant. And this is the practice of yoga. It brings us to a higher level if we can really create the discipline and the fortitude to focus on these internal practices, to cultivate this relationship with God, to recognize our real identity as spirit souls in this, right? Not identify so much with the body. If we can do this, then we can go beyond these dualities and we can go beyond this cycle of happiness and distress. It's like if someone's working out because they want to be fit. And sometimes the weather's hot and sometimes the weather's cold. But if they're serious about their training, then they have to tolerate it and they just keep going. It's the same thing with our spiritual connection. We have to establish this material equanimity. We can't get too caught up in the waves of happiness or distress or let it derail us or go off on sidetracks too long chasing one of them, trying to get more happiness or trying to lessen the amount of distress. We have to be focused on something higher or we'll get pulled into the waves and we won't get there. So that's what the Gita is teaching us in this verse. Does anybody want to share anything about that? Okay, we can move on to the next one. 249. This verse says, "O Dhananjaya, keep all abdominal activities far distant by devotional service, and in that consciousness surrender unto the Lord. Those who want to enjoy the fruits of their work, are misers." So again, comparing karma kanda and karma yoga. Karma kandas are short-sighted. Misers are short-sighted. They have resources, they have money, but instead of using it to do good to others or themselves, they just hoard the money. They're short-sighted. Karma yogas, they're more generous people, and they keep the miserly spirit far away. People who practice karma yoga, they practice buddhi yoga. We've talked about buddhi yoga before. Buddhi means intelligence, using intelligence to establish a connection. That's people that in karma yoga practice. And they really practice this concept of surrender. So whatever results come, they accept them. It's their higher order principle. So the point here is that if we're too attached to results, that's what we're focused on, then we'll miss the opportunities to see something bigger. And that can be a real vulnerability. I think nobody from my family is on this call, so I'll share my family vacation experiences. We go on family vacation, and I swear my family's like all teachers. So, they'll make an agenda of what we're going to do every day. And I swear, like the way that we could determine if the vacation was good or not is if like everything goes to planned. And what I experience in that kind of method, even though I'm also very like task driven, but what I experience in that is that there's like no room for like flexibility or spontaneity, and therefore like connection. It's just like, it just feels like pinched. And it's kind of like a back and forth I have with my family about, it's like a joke but not joke, like this drives me crazy. This doesn't feel like a vacation because there's just no like room. It feels like it's just like, this is the plan and things have to go to this plan. And if they do, it's good. If they don't, it's not good. So that's the struggle there. And I can also fall into that very easily, especially just like in normal life, like when I'm planning my day. If I don't get everything done that I plan to get done, it's like frustrating to me, right? So it's something that we have to recognize in ourselves and kind of try to strike this balance. We want to be responsible, we want to try to plan, we want to try to optimize our time, productivity, all of these things, but at the same time, we don't want to get too overly involved in it, in our consciousness, that we're so attached that if it doesn't happen that way, we're frustrated, we're, feeling bad, so we have to kind of find that sweet spot where we can try our best and then we can surrender the results and know that we did. And in that, leave room for, I call it like Krishna magic. Like maybe your plan is not God's plan. And that's just something we have to recognize sometimes and really lean into, knowing and trusting that God's plan is likely much better than ours. And so ever since I started practicing this path, I've learned that if I can just get out of my own way and become less attached to my plans, the plans that manifest in front of me is always so much better. And most of the time I wouldn't have even considered it, right? Can anyone else relate to that? It's like, anyone else think of a time that you were so dead set on this is the way things need to be? But then as soon as you relinquished a little bit of control to that, you saw that what's happening in front of you is so much better than you could have actually arranged for yourself. Right? I think of that in terms of like me, like my husband, my situation right now, like all these things, like even living where I live, all these things, the best things in my life are things that just kind of like happened without me really like deciding this is what needs to happen for me to be happy. It was more just kind of like opportunities presented themselves. It was like I wasn't too attached or too detailed. I was just kind of like, okay, we'll see. I don't know. And then it ended up being like the best thing ever. Right? That's been my experience. And it's also been my experience that it's such a relief when this happens. Right? Like I don't have to be the controller. I don't know best. All I have to do is just try my best, but not get my consciousness too overly attached to whatever I'm engaged in. And this is tricky, but it's the process and it works. I mean, that's been my experience. Does anybody want to share their experience? Trevor, please share.
I went to a vegan festival this weekend yesterday, and my mom invited me to it, and she had this idea to make a Thanksgiving casserole because it was like a Thanksgiving based one, and apparently like it was bigger than I thought. I thought it was just a normal get together, but there's like the author of China Study, Tim Campbell, is like involved with the group. Dr. Greger, all these people that I know that like do really big seminars and stuff are involved with this group that I went to. I just thought it was a normal get together, but it was pretty cool. But my mom was in here trying to make her recipe come to life, and I was helping her to the best of my capacity without getting in the way, And she was just having a really hard time with things, like the bread she bought for the stuffing said dairy free, and it ended up having eggs in it. And we're like, oh man, that's the first thing I have. Then she like overcooked the croutons, which didn't end up mattering. And like I could see she was just struggling, and at the end she burned herself. And I'm like, she's like, I hope everyone likes it. I was like, well, if no one likes it, then we'll just not eat our stuff. I was just kidding, but then I told her, I was like, it's about serving Krishna. That's what it's always all about, and it doesn't have to be more complicated than that. It's a very simplified process, life, whenever you narrow it down to Krishna. I told her Krishna's gonna see how much energy, how much love, and how much effort you put into this, and that's what is really counting. So
Mm.
don't worry about all the rest, because it seemed to really help her out. But it's there's a big lesson in that. It's like it's so easy to get sucked into the details of life, but whenever we just uh perpetually simplify it, like this is about Krishna, this is not about me, or it's not about pleasing others. Like we want to serve others to the best of our capacity, but like you said, we want to structure a plan, but if it doesn't go exactly that way, it's not supposed to. So it's just to give us a general direction of where we may want to head, but without attachment to it. It's like, if it happens, it happens. If it don't, it don't. But
Yeah.
it ended up bomb. It ended up super bomb. Everyone was talking about it.
That's
Everyone
great.
slammed it.
Oh, that's so funny. Oh, that's so great. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, if what we focus on, if we have a steady sadhana, if we're really cultivating this relationship with God, we come to understand this philosophical point. We come to understand that God really just wants to see our pure effort, just wants to see our love. He just wants to see the love in that casserole. And if that's really that's the relationship that we're building and we're cultivating, and thereby the metric that we're measuring ourselves by, then we can't lose. Then that we should always feel, oh, I'm trying my best, but this didn't go. And, now I'm upset. And then when we're upset, then it's kind of a trigger force, kind of like a flashing light, like, okay, you're forgetting the point here. You're forgetting the real goal. Come back to the real goal. And we remind ourselves that, just like Trevor reminded his mom of that, or our friends remind us, or our teachers remind us, because this is the process and this is what will happen. We'll get stuck in our ego. We'll get so stuck in our ego. We'll get stuck in the little waves of material happiness and distress, thinking that we can control them and that that's what will make us happy or sad, or, and we get so stuck in that we forget the main thing. The main thing is our relationship with God. And all he cares about is our effort. Right? That's so beautiful. It's just like if your child brings you, a potted plant, and they painted, kids paint the pots and they look ridiculous or what, but you love the pot. You love that, the stick figures of your family are like so disproportional and look ridiculous. And it's like the sweetest, most enduring thing to you because you love the child and you see how much love they put into that. That's how Krishna feels about us. So it's really kind of beautiful if we can really imbibe this. You could see how this is what gives us sustaining happiness, because we just try our best out of love, and then we accept however things go, knowing that Krishna is satisfied if we did that, and that we're always filled with this warmth, this love. But as soon as we make it about us, we're in anxiety, we're in frustration, we're in, this ego-centered mentality, and it brings our consciousness down. So it's funny when you think through it, it makes sense, but we just have to do the work. We have to do the work. We have to put the work into this relationship. In the same way, you have to put work into the relationship with like your spouse. You can't just like not talk or see each other and then expect that, you're going to have that connection. You have to be intentional. You have to maybe make time for dates or conversations or quality time, whatever it be, so that you can stay connected. And we have to do the same thing in our relationship with God. It doesn't just come. We have to show up. We have to do our part. So this same mindset, okay, so even if, let's just say, even if you're not so God-centered yet, and you're like, I'm not really sure I'm ready to like surrender my life to a relationship with God. Okay, this same mindset can help you just in your material pursuits, which is what's kind of amazing about spiritual life, is that wherever you are, if you apply this philosophy, you will see it transform your life relative to whatever is important to you. Right? I experienced this in my work as a project manager. So my job was to create plans and to carry out those plans. But if I went overboard, if I got too attached to a result, if I got too zoned in on the end result, it was easy to like stomp over relationships that were actually really crucial in getting the job done, right? Or to miss out on opportunities to maybe make the process easier or simplified, or things like this. If we get too focused, it can actually make us less successful. And I found this example. This formal NFL coach, Bill Walsh. Do you guys know him? Is anybody a football fan here? He was the coach of the San Francisco 49ers, like several years ago, like 1979 head coach. He took them to several Super Bowls. And he describes his journey in taking them over. His strategy is that he didn't focus on the goal of winning games or a championship, but instead he focused on just getting better every game and ensuring every player played with high levels of accuracy and accountability. So he was really zoned in on the process, knew the goal, knew the high level goal, but was really just focused, put his energy on the process. And productivity experts agree with this. They say that the best path to success is by focusing on processes, systems, and habits. The greatest benefit that goals provide is direction. And once you have a clear direction, put all of your energy on focusing on the systems and the processes, and that will reap the best rewards. So it always makes me kind of smile when I see that, like, how these spiritual truths, the spiritual philosophy, if you try it out in real life and you just change the goal, if your goal is a material pursuit, you'll still see success. And in that way, you can also build faith. And maybe you don't care about building faith in God. Okay, but these philosophies, they work. Whatever your goal is, you're gonna see success in your life. The other thing that I wanted to point out here is there is a difference in personality types. I don't know if you guys know Myers-Briggs. That was like a big thing when I was in corporate. Myers-Briggs personalities. Basically, there's different ways that you identify with your personality. The idea being that the more that you can understand your nature, your personality, the more that you can work with it and make it conducive to what you're trying to do. So in Myers-Briggs, there's these two letters. You're either a J or you're either a P. J means judging, not in like a bad way, but it means judging. P means perceiving. And they're on opposite ends of the personality spectrum in relation to how a person approaches the outside world. Right? So individuals who are judging, who are Js, are structured and make formal decisions. They make plans, they stick to their plans. That's what makes them comfortable. That's what that's their nature. The Ps are more perceiving oriented individuals. They tend to plan less, they adapt more to change. They're the ones that are like, we don't need a plan, let's just try it out. They're more just like adapting to their environment. They're more, maybe they'll like, while J's can go overboard in their structure and their plan and get overly attached and miss the opportunities around them. P's can get like lost. They could just wander over here and get lost over there, and who knows what's happening to the goal they set last week. So there's pros and cons to this. And we can probably identify with one of these kinds of personalities for ourselves, right? And probably even, for our spouse, we could probably think of, what our spouse is. And it's easy also to see this and be like, oh, well, that's more spiritual because a P is more spiritual because they're so detached and they can just adapt to their environment. And it's not necessarily true, right? Peas may have an easier time adapting to change and tend to respond more to the environment than try to control it. So they might just be more comfortable with that by nature and therefore have a leg up. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they're more spiritually inclined, because at the end of the day, it's our consciousness and where our consciousness is in terms of when we're working, whatever we're doing, are we dedicating it to God? Are we connecting with God in what we're doing? And less about, our unique natures. They may help us or they may make it harder for us. But the point is that whatever we are, we do for Krishna, and we try to do selflessly, and we dedicate the fruits to Krishna. So we learn to use our personalities to our advantage in spiritual life. If you're a J, if you're a structured planner, this is me. Use it to manage your life. Make sure that you're getting your daily sadhana in. And what you can do to maybe limit this vulnerability that you get overly attached to the outcomes, because this is maybe just your personality, is maybe define broader goals of which to measure success. Like when I do retreats, like I do retreat, just did a retreat with Veda, I do plan out the whole thing. He actually calls me before and he's like, the whole thing needs to be planned out. I was actually kind of surprised when he told me. I'm like, really? I was going to be kind of lax on it, but we could go ahead and plan out the whole thing. So we plan out the whole thing. But then I kind of have to make the goal like the people's experience. If people are uplifted, if people are feeling more connected, that's a win. Not, is my plan going to order? I try my best. I put it out there. And if I see that people are connected and people are uplifted, great. And if they're not, then I can use that skill of planning and structure and to kind of think, okay, what's missing? What would maybe enhance this experience? And maybe do that kind of ad lib in the middle. So we kind of learn ways that we can give our efforts, but regardless, at the end of the day, we all have to try our best and be detached. And for a P, they might have to say, oh, I keep missing my sadhana because I keep getting carried away in this and this. And they have to put a little bit of extra work into coming back. So we have to work with our personalities. But if we're still here, if we're embodied, if our soul is in this body and we're not liberated, we have to work with what we have to serve God. This karmic package, personality traits, resources, right? It's not about what you have, but it's about what you do with what you have. It's about knowing yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, your personality types, and working with it to serve God, to offer your fruits to the whole, not to the individual self, and to accept that. Does anybody have anything they'd like to share about that? Okay, so the Gita does this for Arjuna in terms of expanding his vision. We've talked about this a lot. Arjuna was so focused on his two options, fight or not fight, and all of his reasons were material. That was it. That was his conception of reality. That was his plan. That was what he knew. The Gita expanded his context beyond the material conception of life by explaining his essential identity as an indestructible soul. And again, we are all on transmigration through various bodies on a multi-level journey of spiritual evolution. And what propels us in this journey, this is what the Gita teaches us, what propels us is action that is in harmony with the Supreme Person. And in the Gita, the Supreme Person, Krishna, manifested on earth to establish Dharma, to establish the right thing to do. And he wanted Arjuna to fight in the war for establishing Dharma. So concern for others and philosophy of nonviolence is good. It's way better than like self-centered indulgence that's harmful to others. However, Krishna teaches Arjuna that concern for the body shouldn't be limited to just their bodies. It should extend to their souls. And if something is physically unpleasant, but spiritually beneficial, we need to toughen ourselves up to do what is best without just settling for the good, right? So we have to do what's best, not settle for the good. And in this way, Arjuna allows Krishna to expand his vision. He's not so just stuck on where he is and what's in his he can step back and he can allow Krishna to come in and to expand, and then he can therefore act. So Arjuna's practicing this too. He can't become too attached to what he knows and what he thinks and what his plan is. He allows room, and in that, opportunities present themselves, and that's the practice. That's what we need to try to do in our daily lives. Sometimes there's action, but in spite of action, results might not come. We talked about this a little bit the last time. Like if you're really, you're up for a promotion and you do everything you can to get that promotion, and for whatever reason you don't get the promotion. These things happen, even if you're, the most qualified person, these things happen. Because the effect on a past action, or the effect on your present action, is actually a function of both your past action and the present action, right? Where our karma doesn't start from zero. Like, so for example, when I started practicing yoga, I was really good at back bends and like all the flexible stuff. And people were like, you just started practicing. How are you so good at back bends? And how can you move your body like that? I was like, oh, well, when I was a kid, I did a lot of tumbling and gymnastics. So my body's just kind of conducive to it. I wasn't starting at zero. I had already my body was primed for that. So that when I stepped into yoga, it was like, oh, okay, I can accelerate faster, relative to somebody who's hasn't moved their body like that ever. But that was because I had some past training. So this is the way that karma works in our lives. We talked about this in the last episode. Like if you put a little bit of effort into something and all of a sudden you get these great benefits, it's not necessarily, a lot of that has to do with your past karma. And you might not even know what that past karma is, because it might have even been in a past life. But, you see these people who it's like, they just make things look so easy, like how do they hardly even tried. And now it's like, the world is their oyster. It's like, okay, they have some kind of past karmic deposition to that. And that's how karma works. So we just have to, we have to have this level of surrender and acceptance. We just can't control everything. The universe is not designed that way. It can't be like, everybody's been on a team where I know I was on a team. I was always voted like the most hardworking basketball player, but I rode the bench every single game. Like I never got off that bench. I was not very good, but I would like hustle my butt off every practice. It was like I put everything into it, but it just wasn't that good. This is just life. Right? A desired result is a function of doing our duty. So it is important. Put your effort in. Duration, it might take a while for the fruits of your actions to fruitify. And past action, meaning whatever you did in the past is affecting the result now. The seeds might not even ever fruitify. And that's again, just the way that this universe works. Those are like the parameters that govern this universe. So the Gita teaches us all we can really do is do our best and then surrender to the result. And there's nothing to be lost in doing your best and dedicating the fruits to Krishna. There's nothing to be lost. There's only gain in that, right? So this is what this Buddha yoga means, that there's an intelligent surrender. We can surrender to the duration and the effects of our past actions. And people with a bigger picture of results function accordingly. So again, the Gita is so helpful because it teaches us kind of these rules, that the way that things work. And then it says, okay, now give it to God. And that's the highest goal. And that's where we'll get the most benefit. But even if you don't, now you know the way that these rules work. And really you can apply them in whatever way that you want. Does anybody want to add anything to that? Okay, so then we'll move on to 250. 250 says, a man engaged in devotional service rids himself of both good and bad reactions, even in this life. Therefore, strive for yoga, which is the art of all work. So here we're learning a new definition of yoga. So this is just kind of the way the Sanskrit language works. There's like multiple definitions for words and context. And so this definition of yoga, it's an art of work, an expertise in work. So it's how can one work in such a way that through one's work, they can upgrade their consciousness. There can be an upwards in spiritual consciousness. That's what the work is referring to in this, where it says, therefore strive for yoga, which is the art of work. Because we all have this backlog of karmic stockpiles that will just keep going. We've talked about this a lot. We have karmic stockpiles from this life, past lives, and they are just built up. You know, you have a whole big pile of negative reactions waiting for you from all those times that you acted selfishly, you know, and then you have a whole pile of good karma that's waiting for you for all those times that you acted selflessly. We all have these stockpiles in the bank, right? That's a thing. But what it's saying here is that you can go beyond these karmic stockpiles. You can get out of this cycle of reaction, of action, reaction, action, reaction. You can go beyond it if you practice this Buddha yoga. Right? It takes us beyond the duality coming from our past actions, from our karmic stockpiles. If we can act selflessly, we can get out of this whole cycle. It's like kind of amazing. Right? And in this, we're not only surviving materially, but we're thriving spiritually. And this is what happens when we can detach from work, when we can detach from the outcome, not detach from work, detach from the outcome of our work and really just act selflessly for God. Like Trevor's example, such a beautiful example. You know, Thanksgiving's coming up. You know, we're cooking this beautiful meal. We're doing it to serve our family. We offer it to God before we serve our family. So we're in this consciousness where we're cooking for God. And we know he'll be happy with whatever we offer him. In the same way, you as a mother would be happy with whatever arts and crafts your 5-year-old made you. And if there's a deviation from that, we know that, okay, I have a little bit of work to do in my consciousness. You know, if we get too pulled over and this pumpkin pie did not turn out the exact way that it was supposed to, it does not look like the picture at all. You know, if we get too pulled down in that, we know we have a little work to do. And we come back. And we come back to just trying our best and detaching from the result. And once we can get to that point where, you know, we can mess up and we can laugh about it and we can, you know, still offer it to God and say, I'm really sorry, this is a total flop, but I promise I tried my best, you know, and we can feel that our connection is enhancing. We know that we're doing the work. So even just using those little consciousness as triggers as that to know where we are and how much work we have to do is helpful. Okay, last one, 251. By thus engaging in devotional service to the Lord, great sages or devotees free themselves from the results of work in the material world. In this way, they become free from the cycle of birth and death and attain the state beyond all miseries by going back to Godhead. Okay, so this is a summary verse of what's been discussed in this section up till now. So we have the waves, the ups and downs, waves of material existence. At the top, we're happy. At the bottom, we're distressed. And then above all of those waves, we have the spiritual level beyond that. This is just kind of the setup. And the cause of distress, it could be the down cycle of the material of these ups and downs, right? It could be you lose your job. But an even broader definition is that the distress is caused by being caught in the unending up and down cycle, right? So you get a promotion, you're happy. You get a demotion, you're sad. Then you get another, but the point is that if we can get out of this entirely, if we can stop putting so much value on these material ups and downs, that's how we really get out of this distress. It's not by avoiding the downs. It's by changing our consciousness around it so we're not so attached to either the ups or downs. It's like if we're in the middle of an ocean and there's a storm, it's nice when the storm is over and it becomes peaceful. But even better than waiting for the storm to pass, it's just going beyond the ocean to the land. That's much more peaceful. And that's what Krishna is instructing us to do here. It's saying, just come to me, just give your work to me. And in that, you'll inherently become detached from this cycle. You'll get out of that stormy ocean. We have to learn to practice detachment because we have to understand that the ups and downs of this cycle, it's like two sides of the same coin, and we are just stuck in it. We're just victim to it because we're so stuck in this I mentality, this me-centered mentality. The things need to go my way to make me happy. And if they don't, I'm not happy. And working for our sense gratification, working for our egos, we become slave to our senses, slave to our egos. Get out of that cycle, right? Recognize that you're just a part of the whole. And your job is to serve the whole. That's really your inherent identity. That's what you are. That's what you're designed for. You're not designed to be the center. We know that that leads to misery. It might lead to some high points, but as high as you go, just like those celebrities, is as low as you go when it's gone, because we are not designed for that. And so detachment, it's not about being heartless. It's about being clear-headed about what matters most. And that's what we're doing here. We're acting with intelligence. Intelligence being one who understands the real constitutional position as the eternal servant of God. That's what we are. And if we can cultivate the intelligence around that so that we can really realize that, we can become detached from the results for our own selfish desires, and we can just give the results to God. And this just doesn't mean that we surrender our intelligence. This doesn't mean that we say, okay, well, I know that, I'm a planner, but I don't want to plan too much because I might get in the way of God's plan. So I'm just going to sit around. It's like, no, still engage, still do your duty, but it's your consciousness around that duty. You spend all day planning this beautiful event, and the event actually goes a whole different way, but everybody is so happy. Where's your ability to see what the actual goal is? Where's your ability to see and to zoom out and say, okay, it's not about my plan. It's about the bigger picture. It's about people's connection with God. Where can you see that? Where can you see this selflessness showing up, and do your duty, do your God-given gifts, apply your God-given gifts to enhance it without making it about you. That's the consciousness that we're cultivating here. And this is how we get to this supreme definition, right? Beyond the miserly, beyond the small-minded, beyond the narrow vision. And this is where there's no material, miserable life, nor the influence of time and death. These waves of happiness and distress don't exist, right? It's just connection with God. It's in that connection with God is that rightful position of us being eternal servants. We serve the whole. We don't try to be the whole. And that's the lesson for today, right? How can we all go out into this world for the next few days before we meet again and try to be more mindful of this, how we're practicing detached work, and use these, when we do get upset about burning a casserole, how can we use that? Thank you, Trevor, for that example. It's such a beautiful example that we all can relate to, right? How, when that happens to us the next time, can we say, okay, I'm not going to judge myself. I'm not going to, go one way too much or the other. I'm just going to use it to say, okay, my consciousness is a little bit I-centered right now, a little bit me-centered. How can I redirect? How can I focus it back on the whole, on what matters? And that's how we obtain this enduring happiness and connection in life that we're all seeking. So that's all I have. Would anyone like to share a reflection or an experience related to this or anything? I love to hear from you guys. Some days it's like we get so much interaction. Some days it's not so much, which I'm also, learning to be detached from. So wherever everybody is, it's totally okay. Okay, if nobody has anything. Oh, Angela. Awesome. Angela, let's hear. Please share.
Yes, I just there was something you said that is just so simple, but for some reason it made sense to me today when you said when you make it selfless, then of course there's nothing can go wrong because it's not about you. You know, like that's the simplicity of to make it selfless. Um like it just makes sense, of course. You know, once you remove yourself, then um you know, just anything can go with you know, with it any way, and it will be fine. And just not to just removing, of course it sounds easy, but it's, you know, once you set your mind to work on just removing yourself, I feel you know, it doesn't matter what happens. So I thank you for that. For some reason I heard that so many times, but today it just made sense. So I thank you.
I'm so glad. Yeah, and this can be kind of a fun game that we play with ourselves because we know in our mind when we're bothered, right? And to the extent that we're bothered is to the extent that our ego is attached, that we are attached for ourselves. And that's okay. That's human. But it's time to recognize that and redirect. And it's a fun game. It really is, because you'll notice how many times it happens to you. You know, to the extent that we're attached is to the extent that we become disturbed when things don't go our way. And what are we attached to? And how do we redirect? That's what we're doing here. That's the process. Thank you so much. Lakshmi, do you want to share? Oh, she just, Lakshmi fell off. Okay. I did have an idea that I wanted to share with you guys. I was playing a little bit with these YouTube promotional ad things, because I heard a lot from a lot of you this weekend about how much Thursday was helpful to you. It was Thursday was so great. Everybody shared so much. It was so connecting. Anyway, so it inspired me. I'm like, man, it'd be so great to get more people to come and to share and to connect. And so I did this Instagram thing, you know, or I did this YouTube ad. I think it costs like $10 or something. And I saw that, you know, with that ad, like more people were watching, and then we got like 10 more subscribers or something to our channel. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool if we could do more ads and attract more people and get and increase our community of seekers? And I was thinking, you know, if you guys are so inclined and you're feeling inspired in your heart to increase the community of seekers as well, I do have an ability to like donate, like a monthly donation, even if it's just like, you know, $5 a month or whatever, on the Instagram link tree. So if you go to Instagram, Seekers Quest 108, on the link tree, there's like a donate button. And I was thinking, if anybody's feeling inspired in their heart to expand and to give this knowledge to other people, if you feel benefited and you think it will benefit other people, if you want to donate, whatever donations come in, I'll use for those ads, and we can try to expand our community of seekers. And it's totally detached, right? Whatever comes in, great. Whatever doesn't, it's no problem. So just if you're feeling inspired, inclined, and want to contribute to something like that, and we'll see what happens. If nothing comes in, that's totally fine. You know, this is wonderful, and as long as people are benefiting and getting the knowledge and using it in their day, like that's the goal. So, yeah, I thought I'd just throw that out there. And thank you all for being here. That's all that I have. I'm sorry. Sometimes I hit my camera and it goes blurry and I don't know how to fix it. So that's just a thing. But thank you all for being here. It's so wonderful to see you in the mornings and connect. And please feel free to reach out anytime. I love hearing from you guys, hearing your stories, experiences, paths, journeys. You know, we're all walking each other home. And I love that we get to do it here together in these sanghas. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you. Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
So good to see you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Bo.
Hare Bo. Good to see you.
Thank you, Radha.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Radha. Thank you all.